Alrighty guys, it is Qaaman here today giving you that classical radio-styled podcast as I'm going to ask you a very honest question that I've noticed a lot of you guys have been asking me and a lot of you guys have been talking about in some of the more recent videos. And this is dealing with Emperor Frieza. Now the question is, do you guys have Frieza fatigue? And I want you to be completely honest with this because what I've noticed throughout Dragon Ball history is that Frieza is recognized as the most popular and the best Dragon Ball villain out there, even though I disagree with that. And what I wonder about you guys in the community and Dragon Ball as a whole is, at what point do you get too much Frieza fatigue? Because if you go throughout the entire Dragon Ball history, right? And when I mean the entire Dragon Ball history, I mean obviously he wasn't in Dragon Ball, but if you go back to Z, GT, and Super, the series has always found a way to bring Frieza back somehow. I mean, going back all the way to Dragon Ball Z, obviously he died. Then he came back as Mecha Frieza. Then he died again. Then, if you count movies, I mean, he did technically come back during, Fusion Reborn, so I do technically count that. And let's be honest, guys. Cooler is basically just Frieza reskinned. So, when you go back and you look at the Cooler movies, they basically were Frieza movies when you think about it from an objective standpoint. It's just basically a reskinned Frieza. So, going back to all of that, guys, I mean, you have this guy that has literally come back so many times, and for good reason, because every time Frieza comes back, it gets people to care. And that goes into one of our biggest points in this video of Frieza just makes a lot of money. And I can understand a lot of you guys are frustrated with his return and Black Frieza and so forth, and how we're going to basically have to wait all of this time, where Goku and Vegeta are training to fight against this prodigy that gets infinitely stronger than everybody and trained for 10 years. And then we have to go through basically like this filler-like arc of Goten and Trunks and preparing for Dragon Ball Superhero. So, a lot of cards are on the table for what is going to happen. But I think the biggest point of all, guys, that what we have to realize is that Frieza absolutely must die. And I'm going to make that statement as firm and assertive and as powerful as I can say in this video. Frieza has to die. He has to die. Because one thing that would really set the Dragon Ball world off balance is if you keep Frieza around as like this perpetual villain. That would be the biggest piece of disservice to Dragon Ball fans, probably in the history of Dragon Ball. And what I mean by that is that if you go back and you look at how, Chapter 88 started off, where you see Vegeta looking up in the sky and Goku and Vegeta are preparing to fight him and all that stuff, you can't give us all of this buildup. You can't have Frieza train for 10 years, comes out of nowhere and kills the main villain, and then our characters just can't get the kill on him. That would just be complete injustice. And, considering the fact that Frieza basically killed the main villain, it's like, alright, Dragon Ball, if you're gonna steal our attention and bring Frieza back for this, you gotta end it, man. You really have to, and there are just so many loose ends that simply just have to be tied up. I mean, for crying out loud, we have to remember the fact that Maki and Oil are now basically working for Frieza by force because, I mean, they didn't really have much of a choice. He basically just came in and killed two of their siblings right in front of their very face. And then they're basically like, hey, Frieza, can we go with you? And, obviously Frieza offered them and they took the offer. And it's just one of those things where, if you can't beat them, join them. And, if this guy comes in and literally kills your leader and what you perceived as the strongest being in the universe temporarily in gas, well, then you have to believe that you have to do whatever this guy says. So, obviously they're minor characters, but I do feel like their story has not ended. And this whole thing with 7-3, guys, just has to be, rounded up. It has to be, because we all probably thought that 7-3 was going to have some serious type of usage, in the Granola arc. And I'm actually curious, pause the video and take a second to tell me what you think is going to happen with 7-3. Because if I'm being completely honest with you, I have no clue what's going to happen with him, but I think he can potentially become an ally, considering the fact that he might take sides with our heroes at some particular point, or he might be used for some other power. It's really hard to really pinpoint exactly what would happen for 7-3, but considering the fact that we already know what he's capable of and we already know what he can do specifically in terms of, like, you know, how his personality meshes with his abilities, because he's essentially AI, you look at him as a character and you're like, wow, what could you possibly do with him? Like, you have to tie up that loose end, and also we also have to tie up the loose end with Granola, because the biggest part of everything in today's video, guys, is Granola and Frieza. Because if you go back to the last arc, and obviously we don't know exactly when the time period is, obviously we're before Dragon Ball Superhero, but we don't know anything about what happened to Granola, considering the fact that he only had a few years left of life, because he basically shortened his entire lifespan to get so fast. So if Granola is still alive, you would think that this guy has the biggest vendetta of his life to try and kill Frieza. Like, I feel, guys, I really feel like Dragon Ball is setting up for an amazing arc. Probably the biggest arc ever in Dragon Ball, where there's going to be like this universal war against Frieza and his empire. And I really feel like, if you pay very close attention to everything that Dragon Ball has been doing, where Broly is becoming an ally, where Granola is becoming an ally, where Vegeta's extra motivated to kill him, where Goku has unfinished business, and Gohan and Piccolo just got 2 new transformations, guys, I feel like there has to be something bigger than Dragon Ball Superhero, and I feel like they're gonna have to conclude with probably one of the biggest arcs in Dragon Ball history, with, you know, trying to finally take down Frieza this final time and send him to the home for infinite losers forever. Because if they don't, it would really completely defeat the purpose of Granola's character. Like, you essentially created this character that powered himself up in a short amount of time, and then he just dies because his lifespan was shortened. You know, like, you know, and then even if you go back to the previous arc before the Granola arc, where you're looking at the Mora arc, I mean, Beerus is a mortal now in Universe 7, so you're gonna have to think to yourself, okay, well, if Beerus is around, then he's also a potential ally too in this whole shebang. So, factoring all of this, and factoring in the gods and all of that, I feel like Dragon Ball is really setting itself up for probably one of the most complex arcs that we will probably ever see in Dragon Ball history. But the question is are we going to get the proper execution for this arc? And do we really have Frieza Fatigue? Because, I'll be honest with you guys, I am indifferent to Frieza coming back, because I truly feel, in my heart of hearts, that if Frieza is properly utilized, he can make up for the Granola arc being underwhelming. So I don't have Frieza Fatigue in that sense, but if Frieza comes around to just be a mainstay because he just makes too much money, I think that will be probably the biggest slap in the face that Dragon Ball has ever given its Dragon Ball fans.